Okay, today I want to talk a little bit about karma. And, some of you that may be watching this may be thinking, karma, why are you talking about karma? Well, because I had a couple of experiences this week that I want to share with you. And just kind of as a reminder, that karma follows us wherever we go in our business life, in our personal life, in our profession. And so, I had a discussion this week. I was coaching a chief audit executive, and we ended up talking about karma. And I'll explain a little bit more later in this video about how that kind of came up, why we were talking about it, and really kind of why I want to talk about it today. But if you're familiar with the concept of karma, some of you may be thinking, well, that's just a personal thing. That's nothing to do with business or my profession. But it does actually, whether you believe it or not, has a lot to do with your success in business, with your success in your profession. And I'm going to talk about that. Now, a lot of times, we don't even really realize that what we're doing may have that effect, but it does. Okay. And so karma effectively is, for every action, there's a consequence. And so when those actions, those choices are, good, benevolent, if you will, then those kinds of things come back to you. Good things come back to you. If the choices or decisions or actions are malevolent, then malevolent things will end up coming back to you. Now, it may not be right away. And so sometimes people think, I got away with it. But we never really get away with it. Eventually things come back to us. And let me give you some examples. When I was young in my career, I was very focused on accomplishing things, on getting things done. Sometimes to the point that it didn't matter what I did. If somebody was getting in my way, I would, do things to kind of run them over and make sure that I was able to accomplish whatever goal it was that I had. Now, I thought I was doing the right thing as a young person. Growing up in my career, I made some quick career jumps as a result of it. But I remember one time I had a very awkward conversation with my chief financial officer. And she told me, she said, Jason, you're very good at getting things done, but you run people over in doing it. And, again, I'm going to say that again. She said, you're very good at getting things done, but you tend to run people over when you are doing things. And I thought about that for a little while. And, part of me was kind of like, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm doing the job, right? And as I got older, I kept thinking about that and realized, boy, that's really not the way that I want to act. I don't want to run people over just to accomplish what I want to accomplish and hurt people on the way. And so, I started to change how I was doing things and would do things from much more of a place of kindness and love and cooperation instead of just trying to get done what I wanted to get done. And I didn't think much more about it until guess what happened to me? Later on in my career, I got run over by some people. And, at the time I thought, these people are being jerks. I can't believe they're doing this to me. But it was my consequence of what I had done earlier. Now, I had chosen to change. I was doing things differently, but I still needed to pay for that in a way, right? Karmically pay for that. And so that's, an example from my life, of why I'm sharing this today, because I think a lot of times people don't realize it. They think they can get away with things, but people are watching and eventually everything comes back. I remember it was actually when I had that job, when I ran people over, that I think it was a story. I might get the company wrong, but I think it was Radio Shack at the time. and the CEO got fired. And the reason that the CEO got fired was lying on their resume. Now, again, if you can imagine that, right, that a CEO would lie on their resume to get a job. And at first I was kind of shocked, like, what just happened? Surely that can't be what this person did. But in digging into it a little bit deeper, what had happened was early on in this person's career, they had embellished their resume a little bit to get some of their first jobs. And nobody noticed, nobody questioned it. And later on, that thing just kind of kept perpetuating or going forward on their resume until finally, when, they were a CEO, the company looked into it and said, "Hey, you lied." And it was a long time before that this person had done it, but eventually everything comes out. Okay. Now, why am I talking about this? Well, as I said, I had a discussion this week. I was coaching a chief audit executive, and we were talking about his career and some things that he wanted to do. He was looking at, maybe moving on to another position, only maybe kind of from a growth standpoint. And so we got into, some of the discussions about what was important to him, and not to move just to move, right? Because we don't necessarily want to do that, because things are actually going pretty well for this person. They have support of the board, they have support of the management, but it's a small audit shop. It's in a remote location. All right. And so as this person's looking at it, was asking for my advice on what are maybe some things I can do to, make it easier for me to get my next position if I want to look for something. And so we got talking about some different things that he could do, and he's already doing some things that I suggested, because he's proactive about it. He's thinking about it. But as we got talking more and more, the idea of karma came up, and the idea that as we help people, he's writing articles, he's doing some other things to kind of put his name out there so people know who he is. But in doing it, he's helping people. And, the idea from, like I said, the karmic standpoint is, if we're doing things to help other people, right? If we're coming from a place of kindness and love and compassion, and really, thinking about the well-being of the other people, others notice that. Now, they may not notice it right at first. There may not be some of these positive consequences that come right away, but eventually things come back to you. And so if you're kind in the way that you are doing your business, if you're kind in the way that you're doing your profession, you treat other people like human beings, eventually that will come back to you. And it may not come back in the way that you think it may come back, but things do come back to you. And so part of the discussion with him was, hey, just keep doing a lot of the things that you're doing, maybe be a little bit more intentional about it, but realize that people are watching. People are going to see what you're doing. And it may not be the people who are, directly, seeing it for the first time. Maybe somebody shares it with somebody else who shares it with somebody else, that ends up creating an opportunity, for you. And, so that's one, kind of piece of career advice that I would give here too, is, as you're moving up the ladder, don't be like I was. Don't try to run over people. Still be effective at your job, but do it in the right way. And after I had that discussion with him, it got me thinking more, because I'm a thinker. Okay. And thought about some of the other ways in which, from a business perspective, if you're a business owner, or if you're an employee, maybe from your career development, of how karma actually comes into play. And so I wanted to share some of those with you, because obviously I've been learning as I've been thinking, and I want to share that with you as well. Now, I know, several people, as an example, who have built very successful businesses. They make millions of dollars a year. And what ends up happening sometimes is, after a while, their business starts to crumble and they lose everything. And I'm not judging people. That's not where I'm going, but I just sit and kind of watch and observe what is going on. And I'll tell you, some of the people that I know, they're maybe guilty of some of these things, and karma is coming back to them because, when we're not authentic, when we are doing things like copying from others and then benefiting from copying other people, that's eventually karma is going to have your way with you. So let me explain what that looks like. So, I know some people who have built successful businesses that have effectively just copied somebody else's whatever they had created, right? They read a book, they take a course, and they then on their own just start their own course or write their own book, which is effectively just copying what the other person has done. They may be successful for a while, but I've noticed, especially the people who don't take things and make them their own, right? Because I'm not saying don't read books, don't go to courses, don't learn and kind of create your own method or your own way of looking at it. But the people who just pretty much copy and paste from somebody else, eventually it comes out. And there's been examples of this, of people who have written books, and it's pretty much just a copy and paste of somebody else's book. As an example, eventually that comes out. When that comes out, there's negative consequences for those people, right? But this happens a lot, or people will copy. They will be teaching one thing, but I know that their life is completely different because they're not being authentic, right? They're telling people, to do one thing, but they're not living that themselves. And whenever that happens, whenever there's that disconnect in the authenticity, eventually things start to crumble because karma comes into play. Now, copying can be in lots of different ways. I've explained, kind of from writing a book or creating a course or a business just from copying other people. But copying comes in a lot of other ways too that you may not actually realize. One is, we copy other people when we choose not to be ourselves authentically. And so, what does this look like? It looks like this a lot of the times in the business world, in our professions as well. Instead of being who we authentically are and doing things authentically as we would do them, we look at somebody else and we say, that person's successful, so I want to be like them. And so I'm going to dress like them. I'm going to act like them. I'm going to talk like them. And what we end up doing is we create effectively a copy of that other person instead of being who we truly are. And when we do that, in a way, that is a form of copying, right? And we can do that for a while, and there may be some success that comes from it. But eventually we find out that that's not who we are. And sometimes it leads to depression or to other things that happen because we're not being who we really are. And so anytime that we are not acting as who we are, being who we really are in our authentic self, we're probably copying. And eventually karma will come, in those instances. Now, again, I'm not here to place judgment because I'm learning these things for myself, right? Because in business, I've taken lots of courses. I've learned how to, do different marketing and other things like that. And then I've tried to implement a lot of the things that I've been taught based on, how the other person tells me I'm supposed to do it. And every time I do that, I just don't feel right about myself. And things just don't work the way they're supposed to because, when I'm honest with myself, I'm kind of copying what the person told me to do instead of making it my own. Right. And so, as an example, in marketing, most marketing is fear based. I don't like fear based marketing because I don't want people to be in fear. So I don't want people to be fearful if they don't buy my course, if they don't, use my services, that all hell is going to break loose, right? And they're just going to be things are going to be horrible in your life if you don't buy my product, right? I don't want people to feel that way, and so I've been experimenting and trying to figure out, well, maybe what is love marketing like instead? How can you market using love instead of fear, right? And I'm still working on it. But I know that a lot of what I've been taught is not who I am. And so, when I identify that, I can no longer do those things, or I would no longer be authentic with myself. And karma will come eventually. Now, let me share some other examples of how sometimes our choices in business, we don't maybe understand or realize what we're doing in our profession. So I get a lot of people who have stolen my material over the years. Okay, I'll be honest with you. I remember seeing somebody that was complaining about, somebody stole their book, right, and published it in another country, and it was effectively word for word. Those things happen, right? Now, when those things happen, I guess, one of the questions you may want to ask is, well, have I been copying, and is that why somebody's copying me, right? And I think often when we are honest with ourselves, we realize that's sometimes what has happened. Karma is coming back for us. But I think it's, I get people all the time who want to talk to me for free. They want me to give them advice and they don't want to pay for it. They don't want to pay for it. Right. Or they'll say, hey, let me buy you a cup of coffee. And they want to go and sit down somewhere physically for an hour and buy me a $10 cup of coffee so I can give them $500, 1,000, $1 million worth of advice. And literally, sometimes I have given people advice that can lead to millions of dollars for them in their business, but the people don't want to pay for it. Now, if they take my advice, if they don't compensate or balance me in some way, and they just take that free advice and they go and make a lot of money off of it, that's fine. If that's what they want to do, that's fine, right? But eventually karma will come. And a lot of times, that ends up crumbling down on the people later on. So what does it look like, maybe different? And I'll give you another example from my life because I'm still learning this. I'm still learning this myself. But a friend of mine that I've known for many, many years, we've been friends, and connect every so often. Um, we were talking at one point, and he was describing to me or sharing to me about Substack. I still don't really know a lot about Substack, but how he was starting to use Substack in his business. And he shared with me exactly what he was doing and what his plans were and why he thought this was such a great idea. And, I remember feeling grateful to him for sharing that information with me. Here's my friend, he's sharing information with me because he wants to help me, if this is something that I want to do. And, I could have just said, thank you, and that's it. Right. But I didn't. I looked at that and I said, you know what? He has been a good friend. I really appreciate him. I am grateful for him. I'm grateful for what he shared with me. And so I subscribed to his Substack. I pay him every month or every year, I'm not sure what it is, some amount, because I appreciate the advice that he gave me and I want to return the favor in some way, right? But a lot of us, we don't take the time to do that. In fact, I don't do that a lot of times, and I'm working on that. I'm working on getting better at it. Because, what ends up happening is, we should all be grateful for what we get. Now, again, just like this video, if you're watching it on YouTube, it's free. If you're watching it on social media right now, it's free. Later on, I'll probably put a $10 price tag on it if you'd like to listen to it. But, if you're getting value from this, and again, this is not a requirement, I'm not expecting anything from you, but, what could you do to show gratitude for maybe whatever benefits you're getting from this video? Could you share it with someone else, right? Could you offer in your head a little prayer or whatever you do to say, Jason, thank you. I send you some love. Could you do that? There's lots of different things that we could do, right? Because if you find value or you're grateful for what someone has done for you, we should be willing to pay for it in a way. And it may be money, it may not be money, right? But there should be some balancing because that's really what karma is about. It's about balancing things out because the universe always balances itself. Like I said, sometimes it balances very quickly. Sometimes it takes years or lifetimes, right, before things actually get balanced. But, what can you start doing, that can make a difference? How can you maybe help other people? Maybe you can, share some gratitude. As an example, I've shared before on a video at some point, but there was a man in, when I was still a very young man who kind of acted as a mentor to me. And I don't even know if he's still alive. But many times I have kind of shared a story about him and about how grateful I am to him, right, for what he did for me. And I'll share the story again here, right? Is there's a man, he was a senior executive in one of the organizations where I was working when I was in college. And there was a job that came up, and I was newly married. I had two small children, and so money was tight, right? And I was still in college, and a job opened up in this company, and so I put in for it. It was a full-time job. It was making probably three times what I was making per hour on a part-time basis. So it was a lot more money. It wasn't a lot of money, but it was a lot more money than I was making at the time. And so I put in my application, and I remember he called me into his office. So here I am, a lowly little accounting intern, and I get called into the corporate controller's office. And he knew who I was because we worked in the same proximity and would say hi to each other. But it's interesting because he told me, he said, Jason, I see that you put in this application. I'm just going to tell you right now, I'm going to take it out of the pile because you're not going to get this job, because, and this is where the because came, right? Is he said, I see your potential. And if I let you, take this job right now, you're going to waste your potential. You're going to waste your career. And that's not what you need to do. You need to finish school. You need to go to work for, a public accounting firm. You need to do this, right? And that is going to serve you much more in your profession. And I remember I was a little hurt at the time, right? Because it's like, damn, I really need the money right now. But I so appreciate Jim Crawford because I would not be where I am right now had he not helped me. Now, I told him thank you. I didn't go and give him money. That would have been weird, right? Hey, Jim, here's $20. Thanks for the advice, man. But every time I think about him, I send him some love. I'm grateful to him. I have shared uh, stories about him now a few times, right? And showing him my gratitude and my love for him. So, Jim, thank you, right? So, again, the purpose of this video is not about me, right? It's obviously some of the things that I'm learning, but just trying to help all of you start to think about, I'm sure you want to be successful in your business. I'm sure you want to be successful in your professional career. So what can you do, right, to provide that good karma? And there's some things that you can do, right? As just like I was talking with that executive who I was coaching this week, is, help other people. Help them from the kindness of your heart without expecting anything in return. Because you know what? I have given away millions of dollars worth of training over the years. Literally. I would be a very rich man if everyone actually paid me for what I'm doing. But I don't do it for the money, right? Obviously, I have bills that I have to pay, but I'm not on this video right now, right, asking you to give me, 1995, sending your payment to whatever, right? But I hope that whatever value you're getting from this, you will share in an authentic way. You will incorporate it into your life and you will start living differently, right? Because all I want is for you to have a better life, for you to make a positive impact in this world. And I will tell you, I think a lot of times we want to go to work and be the asshole, right? To get things done because that's what you got to do in the business world. And then we're nice in our personal or spiritual life, right? And we think that we can have those two be completely different, and they cannot be, right? I did a podcast episode recently called Flipping People Off in the Church Parking Lot. And why was it called that? Because a lot of times, and you can see this, test it on Sunday, right? Go by some huge church. And these people would have just spent an hour or two in church, if it's Christian, learning about Jesus and how to be Christ-like. And then they come out of the church and they start flipping people off and honking their horns who are cutting them off in the parking lot, people driving quickly, all this kind of stuff, because they kind of forget they're one way at church, they're one way outside of church. And this is what ends up happening with lots of us. We're one way at work, we're a different way in our personal life. That is not being authentic. And I think, especially when it comes from a karmic perspective, whenever we are not authentic, karma will come, right? So, some questions maybe to ask yourself. Well, what can I do different this week? How can I start showing up differently, right? Instead of just being the kind of employee that everybody expects me to be, instead of wearing the certain kind of clothes, instead of, using certain kinds of words that people expect me to use, how can I make it authentic to myself? How can I be the best me? How can I help others around me? How can I be kinder to the people who work for me? How can I have more compassion for what they're going through, right? How can I collaborate more at work instead of trying to run people over? How can I, right? And when you do those things from your own authentic self in your own way, people will notice and good things will come back to you, right? Just like I was telling this executive, keep doing what you're doing, right? But, maybe be even more intentional about it. What can you do each day that will be a little step closer to where you want to be, right? And part of the discussion that I had with him too was, what's your dream job? What do you really, if you wanted something different, what would you want it to look like? And what one thing can you do each day that will help you get a little bit closer? Just a little bit, right? Because you don't have to eat the elephant in one day. But what one little thing can I do each day that will help me get that much closer, right? So again, I'm just making things up, but as an example, right? Well, I want to become, and I'm using the head of internal audit because that's a space that I've been in for a long time. Okay. What does that look like for you? What kind of a company would you like to work for? What kind of a team would you like to have? Right? What sort of certifications or job skills or other things do you need to get to that point? Right? And what can you start doing today in your own way, not copying somebody else, not expecting free things from people, but what can you actually do, right? That will help you get to that point and let you stay there, right? If you need training, go pay for training, right? Be grateful that somebody has spent their blood, sweat, and tears to create training to help you and actually pay for it, right? Don't don't expect them to give you everything for free. You make all the money, they don't. That's not fair, right? If you want a certain kind of team around you, well, what kind of a leader do you need to be to have that kind of a team, right? And I'll tell you, if you're an asshole at work, right, and you're an asshole to the people that work for you, you're not going to get very far. You may, but eventually it will crumble down, right? But if you want to work with people who are kind and loving, can you be kind and loving, right? If you want people to accept you as you are, can you start to accept people for who they are? You know, I'm working on it. I'm working on it, right? Are these things that we can actually start doing that will end up having benefits later? But it's not, again, don't do it for the benefit. Do it with the right intention. Do it with the intention to help others. Do it with the intention to bring kindness and love in the world. Because what I will tell you is actually, being a good business owner, being someone who's kind and thoughtful and provides value, being a kind and thoughtful leader in a corporation, that has a huge impact on this world. You may or may not realize it, but it has a huge, huge impact in this world. And that's one of the reasons why I keep doing what I've been doing, right? Because if things are tough for people at work, if their boss is a jerk, right? And they come home and they're angry and stressed from work, guess who gets the brunt of that, right? Because at work, we can't grab our boss by the collar and shake him and slap him, right? We can't do that at work. And so who does that stress get taken out on? it gets taken out on the people that we love, right? People come home, they abuse, their partners, they abuse their kids, they abuse their animals. And so the impact that we can have and the more love and kindness that we can bring into the business world, into the jobs that everybody is doing, the better this world actually is. If you're a business owner, providing jobs to people, paying them fairly so they can take care of their family, you're doing a good thing in this world. If you're a boss who is compassionate and understands people's situation and allows your people on your team to be who they are, right? That goes a long way as well, not just in making for good business, but it makes for a good world as well. So I went a little bit long today, but that was really what was on my mind. So again, start thinking about how can you be more authentic. What are some ways that you can, make sure that you're making good choices and that you're not copying other people, but you're really being true to who you are authentically as well, because I want nothing but the best for you. So with that, I will leave you. Much thanks for listening to this video, and I will see you on the next video. Have a blessed day.